Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled HOA neighbor Karen thinks she has a right to use my driveway and block me in. I ended up suing her, and here is what happened. The title story starts like this. I feel like everyone that is part of an HOA has an HOA Karen somewhere. They might vary in intensity or stupidity, but they always exist. Mine lives next door to me and is under the assumption that being part of the HOA means that you're basically forfeiting your rights to private property and giving the HOA full use of your property. While there are some rules that dictate HOA giving notice and going on your property for very legitimate issues, she is not talking about that. She really thinks she has the right to use my property for her personal use and get away with it. While I have had to kick her off my lawn a couple times in the past, this is more about how she thinks my driveway is for her no matter how many times I tell her not to use it. She likes to park right in front of my car, essentially blocking me in and making it impossible for me to go places. She has stopped me from doing simple things like running errands all the way to blocking me when I had to get to work and her being nowhere around. For those asking why I don't just keep my car near the edge of the driveway, I've tried that. She parks across to still block me in and then sends a letter talking about how I am misusing my driveway and she is gonna fine me for it. Somehow. I got tired of trying to believe that Karen would listen to reason and decided that the next time she parked in my driveway, I was just gonna call somebody to come and tow her car away. It didn't take long either, because only 3 days after I made that decision did she park in my driveway yet again. I got her towed away, and as soon as she saw the tow truck driving down the street with her car, she came right at me screaming, "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing to my car? Are you insane? Me, I warned you several times not to park in my driveway. Maybe now you will realize how serious I was about it. Karen, that driveway is HOA property and I have the right to use it. That was an illegal tow and I can have you thrown in jail for towing my car and going against the HOA. I knew that even if it was an illegal tow, that's not the kind of offense that would land me in jail. I tried to stay calm and let Karen rant because I don't fight with people like that. I knew that I was in the right and how things would end if she really did try and sue me. She yelled more before finally storming back into her house. She did end up filing a lawsuit against me and going to court claiming I illegally towed her car and went against the HOA rules. In court, she got destroyed by the lawyers and flat out admitted that she knew the driveway was on my property, but continued saying that being part of the HOA and her being on the board meant she had unrestricted access. That I had given up the property when I joined the HOA and I illegally towed her car. She was of course flat out told by the lawyers and judge that it was still my property. Unless she could provide any evidence that she was paying rent to the driveway or had permission to use it, she was the one in the wrong. She obviously couldn't and was told that I would not have to pay any money to get her car out of impound. That she parked illegally and would have to be the one to pay and get her car back because of it. They also made notes to tell her that if she parked in my driveway again, I had the right to call and get her towed at her own expense yet again. She didn't like the outcome of this and I think still believed in her mind that she was right, that I screwed her over and because of that she deserved to get some revenge on me. I heard her coming onto my property and I was on the second floor and could see out of the window. She had in her hands a baseball bat and what looked like a can of spray paint. I turned on my phone camera to get a recording of whatever she was gonna do. There was no way I was going outside and confronting a crazy woman who was also holding a baseball bat in her hand. The first thing I saw her do was take that bat and knock off both of my side mirrors. I knew at that moment to call the police and tell them my crazy neighbor was taking a baseball bat to my car and I needed help. They were gonna send cops, but in the meantime I could only keep watching and recording what she was doing. She used the bat more and broke my lights with it before throwing it to the ground and moving on to something else. I couldn't tell at first what she pulled out of her pocket, but soon realized it was a key and she dragged it along the entire length of my car. Then she pulled out a knife and slashed my tires. I was hoping the police would come soon because she was running out of the car to destroy it and I was scared what she would do next. She had just started using the spray paint to create long black lines across my windows when the police finally showed up and put her in handcuffs. At that point I felt safe to stop recording and go outside to talk to them about what she was doing. Me, she just showed up and started destroying my car. She had a bat and a knife. Officer, ma'am, do you know any reason she might have done this? Me, she tried to sue me to park in my driveway and she lost. She's probably mad about that. Officer, okay, so we're gonna arrest her since we caught her in the act. No criminal charges will probably hold her long, so I recommend filing a lawsuit for the car. Me, okay, thank you, officer. In the background, Karen was yelling and telling them that they couldn't arrest her because she was part of the HOA and had the right to do whatever she wanted. She also wanted me arrested for recording her because she said it was illegal to record her without permission and the police told her I had the right to do it. This time in court, with her being on the other side, still didn't help her. I came after her hard using my video as evidence plus the paperwork from the previous court case. She was found liable for destroying my car and had to pay a nice sum of money for me to go and get it fixed. Word got around about Karen destroying an HOA member's car and nobody wanted her to be on the board anymore. The president had no choice but to remove her and kick her out of the HOA, which seemed to be the only thing she had going for her, which made it taste extra sweet for her to get removed. And here, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would really help me out. Thank you so much. The next one is titled More Petty Than You. I'm sure you can all see where this story is going from the title, but let me paint you a picture as this happened not but an hour ago on my way home from work. Popped into a supermarket on the way home for food as we have nothing in the fridge, and as I positioned myself to back into a space, I noticed a tiny car park space where not one but two cars had taken it upon themselves to park overhanging their lines so as to deter people from parking next to their precious vehicle. Well, for most people they would have chanted something about terrible parking and moved on with their lives, but not me. I drive a relatively small car, coincidentally, the perfect size to fit in between the two cars with, I kid you not a centimeter, less than an inch for my friends across the pond to spare on either side. It took me a solid couple of minutes to inch my way into the space as to not touch either vehicle, but eventually I got myself in. Now, being quite slim and relatively flexible, I was able to climb out of my window onto my roof and slide down the back of my car. Feeling happy with myself, I queued up to pay for my items, hoping the bad parkers had gotten their just desserts. That is when I saw them. Through the window by the checkouts, the occupants of both vehicles were pacing around theirs and my vehicle, occasionally throwing their hands in the air. One couple and one family trying to figure out how to get into their cars. This is where some of you may call me the a-hole and that I should have just found a different spot. To that I say, just a couple of spaces along were designated family kid-friendly spots with extra room for those with kids. Grinning from ear to ear, I watch as the father of the family is able to back his car out to let the rest of the family in. Meanwhile, the other vehicle had their driver's side millimeters away from my passenger side. After paying, I hastily walk out so as to not miss anything and to make sure no car keying takes place, and the woman of the couple, apparently, the driver is yelling at her partner about how she's gonna get in and who would park so close to her when there are loads of other spots. I walk closer to my car and she clocks that I'm the person causing her all of this stress. Trying to hide my Cheshire smile, she starts trying to give me crap about parking so close, and when I reply that I'm within my lines, it is you that is close to me. The man of the couple has been silent as I believe he is secretly on my side and is trying to calm the woman down. "How am I supposed to get in?" she exclaims. She was a plus-sized woman and had no hope of crawling over the passenger seat, let alone through the boot. Trunk for my American friends. I have no idea, but try parking with consideration for others next time and maybe you won't find yourself in the predicament again, I replied. With that, I hopped in my now easy-to-access driver's side with the intention of driving away. However, my phone rang and it was a call I genuinely had to take, perfect timing nonetheless. I sat there talking to a colleague as she started yelling at her man about how he should do something. He continued to try to calm her down and my call ended. I felt like I had my fun and inched my way back out of the spot. I felt like staying there for longer, but it's Friday and I want to get home too. For some this is nothing, but for me, who is very non-confrontational, I found this a very satisfying way to get my point across to these entitled drivers. Road rage is dangerous and irresponsible, so I find this to be a good alternative. The next one is another revenge story. A bit of background first. I've worked in the service industry since I was 16 and it's a place where you would see the absolute worst of humanity. Seriously, people can really suck. I've loads of stories of entitled a-holes, but not that many revenge stories to be honest with you. This is one of the times I got my revenge and some manager couldn't just override anything I did. On to the story. When I was 18, I worked in the restaurant section of a big multi-story department store. For the Brits here, it was Debenhams. A kind of middle-class clothing/homeware department store. During the weekday afternoon it was quiet, so there was usually one server and one supervisor. In the quiet times I would do some deep cleaning, and today was the day that the fryers were to be emptied and cleaned. My supervisor was in the office doing rota, so I was out front. I would serve drinks and cakes and make food when it was required. Enter the douchebag, probably early 30s with a toddler on the hip, about 2 years old. He picks up a sandwich and I ring it up asking whether he would like drinks, etc., and he asks me why the deal was not on. Our afternoon deal at the moment is to add a packet of crisps and a drink for an extra £2 to any sandwich. Did you want the deal added on, sir? No. The deal to add a portion of chips to any sandwich for £1. Now, I'd been there for about 8 months and I'd never heard of this deal. So I kindly informed the man that we didn't have this deal on, and he went from 0 to 10 in the blink of an eye. He started shouting at me, telling me how stupid I was for not knowing about this deal, how he would get it every time he came in, etc. In between the ranting, I asked when he last got this deal. He told me last year. I didn't really know what to say at this point, so I went to get my supervisor. My supervisor was a nice guy, but he was a pushover and hated confrontation. So while he spoke to the customer and was berated for hiring a stupid young girl, aka me, I could see my supervisor was gonna crumble. While my supervisor worked on the till to try and find a way to add some chips for £1, the customer started to talk to his toddler. What a stupid girl for not knowing about daddy's deal. Don't worry, son, I will never let you work in a crappy place like this. I'll make sure you get a good education so you're not stuck in a dead-end job with the IQ of a walnut. I'm at the other end of the counter listening to this, getting incredibly pissed off. Never mind the fact that I was in my first year of university and I had to work to live at the same time. So as soon as I hear my supervisor telling the man he had found this deal, I went out back. I had everything ready to deep clean the fryer, so I opened the valves and emptied out all the oil. By the time my supervisor came to the kitchen to tell me to put the chips on, I was already squirting the cleaning agent into the empty fryers. The look of horror on my supervisor's face made me feel a little guilty, because now he would have to deal with the guy. But then again, he didn't stick up for me and gave this guy a deal which we were not even supposed to do, all because the customer was a man-child. The guy howled like a banshee when he was told that he couldn't have the chips. I was in the kitchen listening, happily scrubbing the fryers. The guy threatened to have all our jobs, and he did write a letter of complaint to the store manager. But we didn't get told off because this deal was not active in our system. Guess I was just too stupid to know that chips needed fryers. Damn, my lack of education, right? And yeah, ripe stars, dealing with such customers on a daily basis must be really damaging. I mean, seriously, facing this level of entitlement is honestly just too tough. Have you ever worked in such a job? It must be mentally so exhausting to deal with such stupid Karens. I cannot imagine. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Steal grandpa's parking spot, big regrets. I guess that these a-hole neighbors are really starting in on the older generation, thinking that they are easy prey. Let this story be a lesson not only to the neighbor, but to anyone that thinks just because someone is old that it means that they are an easy target to go after. Personally, I think the older generation are sly, crafty, and don't like to let anything go. My grandpa is one of these types of people, and as a retired Vietnam vet, he really does not want to let nasty people get away with being that way. Now, the title alone might make it sound like my grandpa is crazy or something for doing this over a spot, but let me explain first. Now, my grandpa lives in an apartment complex and shares a parking lot with all the other residents. Everyone who lives there gets a spot, some can just be closer to the doors than others. It is not unheard of for sometimes people to snipe good parking spots as soon as people leave. The few spots near the door though are assigned spots and are given to residents that are disabled and actively need to be close to the front entrance for obvious reasons. Grandpa with his age and a bad knee results in him needing a cane and getting that parking. One neighbor that lives in the building though just does not seem to get the message and constantly is trying to steal these spots. Now it is clear that they are marked with permit only, and he has been told many times that he cannot park in those spots. Still, whenever Grandpa goes outside, he notices that neighbor's car is parked where it really should not be. So he decided that he was going to be the one to confront him when he parked in another renter's spot. Grandpa, you are not allowed to park there, you know. Neighbor,
Mind your own business, this is my spot.
Grandpa, we both know very well that you don't have one of the permits only spots. The real owner of that spot can call and get you towed. I have no idea if that was true because this man had been doing this for ages and never once got anything more than being asked nicely not to do it again by the building manager. So it was probably an empty threat, and all it really caused was neighbor to decide that my grandpa had the spot that he wanted the most. After that, no matter where grandpa went or for how long, he would come home to find neighbor in his spot. Even if the neighbor was in a different stolen spot, it was as if he was always watching, and when grandpa moved his car, neighbor would run out and move into his spot. If you don't think that this guy was being a complete jerk, then you might be more of the problem than of the solution. Anyway though, I know you want to know what caused grandpa to finally turn it up to 11 when it came to revenge. Well, grandpa had been seeing some random dents and dings on his car since that event and could never prove that it was the neighbors doing it. One day though, he ended up with his entire rear fender smashed in and blue paint being left behind. Neighbor had the only blue car in the lot, and suddenly his front bumper looked slightly damaged. Grandpa was parked too, so it was obvious that neighbor had moved on to actually damaging his car. You might ask why grandpa did not call the police or go to the building manager. Well, he did both, and the police said that he did not have evidence that the damage was caused by the neighbor, so they could not really do anything. And since the lot was privately owned, they would need a call from the owner of the building to have a car towed. So grandpa went to the building manager, who basically said he did not want to get involved in the feud and was not going to be the parking lot police. That did not really leave him with too many options, and like I said at the beginning, he was not the kind of man to mess with in the first place. He was going to decide that he was going to park in this spot, and he did not really care if the neighbor was already there. Sadly, I don't have the details of how it actually happened or how he managed to basically get the cars in that position. However, the next time he went out and came home, he found neighbor's bright blue car once again sitting in his spot. Grandpa parked in his spot anyway, and someone with his bad knee managed to get himself out and safe from what was now sitting in the spot. The bright blue neighbor's car was now half underneath my grandpa's black SUV. He figured since his car was already damaged, he really did not care anymore and just wanted to teach the neighbor a lesson. He did not want to miss the fireworks though, so he sat outside on one of the benches and pretended to read a book until neighbor finally came outside and saw what was going on. According to grandpa, his face turned bright red as he was yelling at my grandpa about his car being destroyed. He chose this moment to act like an innocent old man that did not know what was going on, as a crowd was forming and watching a 30-year-old guy yell at this old man with a cane. Obviously, it did not take long before the building manager and police to show up to see the commotion. They all walked to the cars and asked my grandpa what happened. He said that he just parked in his assigned spot and that is all that he knew. The police obviously did not believe him because there was no way it was done without knowledge. But they also did not arrest him. They had to get 2 tow trucks to take care of the mess and get both cars out of there. Grandpa did not mind having to pay for the tow and for repairing his car because he knew that neighbor learned not to steal other people's spots after that. I don't know if anything will come from this in the future, but I do know that the neighbor learned his lesson and stopped parking where he shouldn't once he got his car back and fixed. I still don't know if he thought that he was never going to get caught, never get in trouble, or just honestly did not care. He thought that my grandpa was just some old guy that was going to roll over and give neighbor what he wanted. Instead, he took what was rightfully his after warning the neighbor that he should not be parking in other people's spots. The bottom line is that if anyone out there thinks old people are a good target, think again. You might end up getting some revenge served onto you that you deserved in a way that might not be the most conventional. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.